What can be dreamt can be done. You can do anything. I promise. And however unbelievable that may sound to you right now, I'm here to prove you that it really works. Why am I not afraid to make this kind of bold statement? Am I just another cheeky business coach or a dreamer who has lost contact with reality? No, I'm a physiotherapist. Trust me, I'm a physiotherapist. And I see such miracles every day. And I know that I'm not just an observer or silent participant, let's say, but a dreamer. Dreamer. I am a dreamer, but co-creator of my patient's transformation, caused by adaptation, which is conditioned by many factors and essential to all living nature. One of my patients had to make a decision about whether or not to undergo a surgery of a brain aneurysm. She was 19 and just after her maturity exam. Her doctor said that this operation could cause damaging side effects. Half of her body could become partly paralyzed. However, not clipping this brain aneurysm could cause death. You can imagine how difficult and traumatic the decision was for such a young girl. She asked our team of physiotherapists what she should do. If you feel that she should choose live a life as a paralyzed person, I couldn't agree with you more. Why? If you and you know that what give me right to take that risk, our knowledge about and experience with adaptation. We knew that even if paralysis occurred, we can work with her with the adaptation, using the adaptation and steering this process. By using this healing power, we could bring her back to a healthy state and happy life, regardless of any remaining dysfunction of her body. How is that possible? The secret is adaptation. The secret is adaptation, a feature which is foundation of evolution, which is essential to all living nature development. In nature, it looks like this. You live in happy orangutans or orcas life. Or, doesn't matter. Another. And someday, something unexpectedly happens or appears in your environment. You have two choices: adapt or escape. If you are an orangutan or orca, you have just these choices. You must adapt or you will die. This is just life for you if you were orangutan or orca. But as human beings, we have learned to consciously pick and modify the adaptation process. So if you want to be stronger or fitter, you go to the gym. if you want to speak a new language, you go to the class. You just know that it's the way that's work. That is no progress without moving out from our comfort zone. Believe me, I feel that now, in this moment. You just... to speak in psychological terms, but in the language of physiotherapy, we call it facilitation. In the language of sport, we call it training. In the language of education, we call it advancement. See, it works in all areas of our life. Under different names, sometimes undercover. So if it's something you want to change, there is one real question. Do I really want to do this? Do I, not can I? Because there is no doubt that you can. And I can prove it in 3 ways. First, scientific evidence. In fMRI scans, we can see changes in patients' brains before and after training unit. During long-time training, we can observe the activity of cortex representation rebuilding. What it means is that part of your brain, which is responsible for steering your body, you are training, is simply gets larger or making it better coordinated, more precise or efficient. But if you go to the gym and exercise, not only your brain, but also your body is changing. After training, we observe changes in different parts of our body. During sometimes it takes time for your brain to realize that the body has changed or learn something new. Sports people often say in interviews that only if they started to work with psychologists can have they sorry. They can use the maximum potential they developed in training. So the sports adaptation, the sports person adaptation potential is huge in physical aspects, but not necessarily in psychological. Sometimes they need to use psychological support, need support in psychological adaptation. Only when these areas work together will the person be successful. Now some practical evidence. Once I had a patient who kept coming to me every 6 months, not every month, every 6 months with a severe neck pain. I fixed her neck and she left home, and she go home. After 6 months, she coming back in my hands. After 5 or 6 such visits, she hopelessly asked, what could I do so that I don't have to coming back here with this terrible pain? I said, you have to coming here every week. So she did. First, I fixed her spine, and next I started teaching her new functional patterns through training. And you need to know that before she couldn't tell left from right, arm from leg. With time, she became better coordinated and more motorically dexterous. She started going squats with 35 kilo weight. But also she developed a bikini body. She have never dreamt of. After some period of time, she started learning play the piano. After the second lesson, she almost played with both hands. And she definitely could tell left from right. She happens to be a very good friend of mine, so throughout that time I have also observed how it influenced her psychologically, how she became happier with her life and happier with herself, more self-confident and calmer. Now she knows that if she managed to achieve so much in training, she can do anything. If only she tries, give herself enough time and patience to adapt. This example proves that if you steer adaptation properly in one area, it can translate into the development, satisfaction, happiness in all aspects of your life. Because you learned that impossible is nothing. Because you realize that your body and mind have been designed for changes, for change. After this time, you know that you can teach yourself to learn. Adaptation will work whether you want it or not. I once had a patient who spent 2 months in a bed without proper physiotherapy after knee replacement. As a result, he never learned to walk again. Adaptation is ruthless, and organism will adapt to any given condition. And if the conditions are not properly designed, the effects of adaptation will be negative for us. That's why steering this process is essential. And what needs to be steered is conditions, not adaptation itself. To finish this part of my talk on a lighter note, I would like to give you one more example of adaptation, a positive one. Once I had a patient, post-stroke patient, who suffered from motor aphasia. It's a terrible condition in which the patient knows exactly what he wants to say and know how to express himself. But the part of his brain responsible for the articulation words is damaged. He's locked and caged, his inability to speak. Jacek suffered from stroke, as a result of which he could utter just 7 words. Tak, raz, dwa, trzy, ej I kurwa mać. He was pretty efficient to communicating with these words. For example, when I visit him at home for treatment, when there were 2 cups of tea on the table, one for him and one for his wife. So he said, "Ej, raz, dwa, trzy," pointing at the cups and then at me. Which meant that there wasn't a 3rd cup of tea for me. Her wife was an angel. She was patient and she did perfectly good job taking care of him, but there was one thing she couldn't stand: her husband calling her a. That's why I decided I would teach him 8th word in his lexicon to add to his life a new quality of sentiment. The word I decided to teach him was Maya, the name of his wife. One day when we finished this exhausting process, she came back home during our session, and I said to Jacek, "Tell her what we learned." He said, "Maya." Of course, I saw tears in her eyes. The last thing I wanted to share with you is my personal evidence that adaptation exists, and if used properly, changes life for the better. As a child, I struggled at school. I couldn't tell you, I could learn to read, and I have some problems with writing. When I tried to combine letters into the words and words into the sentences, I need much more time than other children. And learning to do it took longer in my case. Yeah. The more other kids read, the better they became. But not me. I was stuck in the same place. I remember myself trembling at the school desk when the teacher asked me to read a piece of ABC book out loud. Somehow I made into the 2nd class. Teacher told me, my parents, that I was very smart pupil. One who knows a lot, understands a lot, remembers a lot, talks a lot, just cannot learn to read. It was a terrible cognitive dissonance for everyone. Great developed speaking and self-expression abilities, and undeveloped reading skills. For my parents, it was a challenge. They spent long hours teaching me how to read, how to combine letters and words. I could not tell you how much I cried. I said that I didn't need reading anyway, that I wasn't stupid and I could easily live without it. For a child, it was an eternity to reading inside or running with other kids. You know, those days kids still played outside. One day, my mother, a pharmacist, talked to her customers about her problems with her little boy. Several days later, the woman brought her a newspaper clip. I know that it sounds weird that it wasn't a Wikipedia link, but you know, it was a quarter of a century ago. So she brought her this clip with an article about newly discovered developmental dysfunction called dyslexia. Oh, happy day! All the hope and reliefs that science and journalism brought to my family. Because now, when my condition had a name, ways of work with it could be found. Looking back at my school days, when my teachers said about me that I had a great speaking skills and great memory, and I absorbed educational TV like a sponge, it was already a sign of adaptation. My brain needed to process information, but it had to find another input channel than reading, than the ones used in regular education. I had strong desire to learn, but not through reading. I do believe this is what made me who I am today, a scientist and practitioner with interdisciplinary approach, looking for knowledge in many various sources. But going back to school, when the teacher asked me to read something out loud, it was such traumatic experience that throughout entire process of my education, I had problem doing it. Even worse when it was in foreign language. So, for example, reading exercises instruction in English to the class. And now look, I am doing such a good job reading this talk to you. It always made me embarrassed, made me feel like I was exposing my weakest spots. Like how? So I had very negative approach to learn a foreign language. And I came to terms with the fact that I will never learn English, even though I had a strong need to express myself and explore knowledge of and through this language. Then, one day, I discovered that I had learned Russian somehow by the way, by being surrounded by Russian-speaking people. Which is a sign of adaptation. Then I found a teacher who understood the point I was making, and she found a right method for me. I found it much easier when I was exposed on a melody of the language, which is in line with that Patricia talked about earlier today. Speaking of whom, after some time when my teacher Asha left, and looking for new teacher, I found Patricia. Some of you surely know her and her methods and how crazy about teaching she is. I said before that you can influence adaptation by steering condition to which a person adapts. So she steered my condition in a way that brought Sławek, who was never supposed to learn English at all, to a point when he delivered this talk to you in this very language. So to sum up, adaptation is multifactorial phenomenon, which is hard to put in clearly defined frames. It means something else for everyone, and will occur in all sorts of different conditions. You are at the steering wheel. Keep focusing on your goals, keep listening to your brain and your body, keep looking for the perfect solution for yourself. There is no one-size-fits-all in adaptation. You and only you know which way to go. You can call it intuition, you can call it meta-analysis, it doesn't matter. You just don't lose track of your own adaptation benchmarks. I can assure you, what can be done, can be done.